Welcome to Flavor Text, a podcast where we examine the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay in Arkham Horror the card game. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and I'm joined, as usual, by my significantly sonorous co-presenter, Kevling. Hey, Kevling, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, CrabbyTerror. How are you?
Good. Yes, I'm okay. We're still recovering in Australia from the Matildas not winning the World Cup. Not that I care, but yes, there was a palpable.
And we're recovering from that as well.
Yes, right.
Not the Matildas, but the Lionesses.
Although Australia isn't noted as one of the football superpowers of the world, it's one of the, it's not up there with some of the other sports Australia plays. So considering they did as well as they did, is a pretty good outcome. But definitely, Britain was a better team on the day when they played Australia. That's for sure. I think most Australians would admit that grudgingly. So
I think you'd better say England and not Britain.
Oh,
Scottish.
Yes,
and the Welsh.
Oops, my bad. So, what have you been up to other than not watching the soccer, football? Sorry, what else have you been up to?
Right, games-wise, what have I been doing? I got a copy of, I forgot what it's called, Dorf Romantic, the board game.
Oh, yeah.
For my birthday the other week. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's quite a light, cooperative sort of town-building board game where you're literally just placing hex tiles to make them match. And then what it does, it has... Similar to a legacy game, it has a whole series of boxes that you unlock when you meet certain achievements. So it's very video gamey. In fact, it's based on a video game that I'd never heard of. But yeah, you unlocking new rules and new methods of scoring, and gradually getting better and better as the game progresses. I played it 11 times now, and I've just unlocked a bunch of stuff yesterday that I won't go into because it won't mean anything. But yeah, there'll be tiles, and as an example, you've spotted on some of the tiles there's sheep.
Ah, yeah.
And it means absolutely nothing.
Yes.
And then I got to one point in the game where I've unlocked the shepherdess. And so, as part of the end game scoring, any connected tiles to her that have got sheep on, you score a point per sheep.
Oh, nice.
So that adds another extra matching element into the way you're putting the tiles down. You're not just making fields match fields and towns match towns and extending the railway. There's all these other elements, and then there's a whole bunch of unlocks that I've not come across yet. So I'm sure there's more of that to come. But absolutely fantastic game. You can play it on your own. It's nice and chilled. Get it done in a half an hour.
Yes.
Very quick setup. It's absolutely brilliant. I thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah. I saw you posted, I think on Facebook, the layout and everything. I noticed that you posted that. It looked really nice.
Yeah. Lovely little game.
Yeah.
It's not expensive either. I think it's probably about £25, something like that. So whatever that is in your local currency.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. What was it called again?
Dorf Romantic. I think it means romantic village.
Right.
I don't know if it's German or it just won the Spiel des Jahres this year.
Yep.
So it's well regarded.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I'll have to check that out. That sounds really great.
I also, Arkham-wise, I finally dusted off my Dark Matter campaign and played the next scenario on that. So now I've done the second scenario. What a huge advancement I've made. But
Are you playing that true solo or?
Yes, I'm taking Nathaniel Cho. He's boxing his way around outer space at the moment. Yes, but I'm really impressed with that as a fan-made campaign. It is. I mean, like I say, I'm only 2 episodes in, but it's superb. The clever mechanics that they've brought in. The one I just played, the second one, was where the rooms move around depending on enemy movement or other things happening, and you had to get them into a certain configuration. It was really, really clever. Yeah.
And I like the way they a lot of the mechanics and things sort of de-emphasize combat. I mean, there's not that there isn't combat, but it's easy just to sort of always fall back on combat, I suppose, as a way to kind of resolve things. So yeah, it's really it's good. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
And what about you? What have you been up to gaming wise?
Just trying to think. So I just played our Thursday night Arkham Horror sort of fortnightly get together. We're going through Dream Eaters at the moment. So we just completed the second scenario of the A track. So those are the people who are dreaming. So that's the one where you have to go to all the islands. You have to sort of take a ship and sort of sail around to all the islands and get all the hands of God or the something of God. Something? Sorry?
Is that Devil Reef? Or am I getting my scenarios mixed up?
No, I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, you accumulate these hands of God as you sort of go around and to all these different... and each island's like 3 locations or something like that. So, yeah, I'm actually really enjoying playing it. Yeah, having fun with... I hadn't played Luke before, the dream guy.
Yeah.
Or the orgy guy, as I call him, with his dressing gown, and he's sort of a bit creepy, and he sort of wafts around. Yeah. Yes, right. But it's great because you can disappear, into your own little kind of dream place, and then reappear again and
find your happy place.
Yes, that's right, exactly. Which is quite a lot of fun because you can get up to all kinds of shenanigans and just disappear when you don't want to be there. So I'm quite enjoying doing that. So I've been playing that. Apart from that and the usual YouTubey stuff, I finished Assassin's Creed Origins, so nice. I finished that. It's bloody huge. Yes. It's taken ages to finish it. So I started Prey, it's called, on the PS4, which is sort of, I think it's made by the same people. It's sort of very Bioshock-like.
Yes.
So it feels a bit derivative, sort of Half-Life Bioshocky sort of feel in space, but it's good. I'm enjoying that, and I'm still sort of grinding my way through Bloodborne as well, trying to get platinum on that. So yes, that's what I've been up to.
Excellent.
Yes. So yes, here we are in Forgotten Age. Where are we up to, Kevling? It seems like ages since we last recorded something. Where are we up to in that?
We just did Heart of the Elders Part 1 and 2, didn't we? And it finished with us sort of falling into unconsciousness at the feet of Alejandro, wasn't it?
Yes, the cad.
And he says something like, "Take their minds, and it is the last thing you remember." Or something along those lines, wasn't it?
Yes, we've no further use for them. Yeah. Oh, spoilers. Oh, my goodness. What a shocking twist.
Yes.
That's right. So that's where we ended up. So then we move into the City of Archives. Yes.
It's a bit of a polarizing one, this one, isn't it?
It is. It is polarizing. And I was probably a bit more negative towards it. I probably moved more towards the middle, which, if it's polarized, would be the sort of the minority, I suppose. Well, yes. But when we played it, I actually enjoyed it more than I have in the past. But
it's probably because we succeeded.
I completely understand. Sorry?
It's probably because we succeeded.
Well, yeah, that did help, didn't it?
It does help, doesn't it? Yes. Yes, because I think, well, we'll get to it, won't we? But the potential outcomes of the City of Archive is probably even more polarising than the scenario itself. The condition you can be left in, shall we say?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things as well. If you're playing the Forgotten Age blind, and you don't know this is coming, I can well understand you getting a bit ragey about it.
Yes.
Like, what?
You built your deck a certain way, you filled it with all these assets you can use.
Right.
What do you mean I can't use any of them?
Yes, that's right.
And I've lost my unique skills.
Yes. You've given me 5 XP across 5 scenarios, and now you're not going to let me use them?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. So it kind of, there's a bit of a kind of a time slip, isn't there? And then the intro one kicks in, doesn't it?
Yes. Shall I take the intro one?
Yeah, go for it.
You remember very little of the next few days. Your consciousness fades in and out as your body grips with exhaustion, and your mind feebly attempts to comprehend what exactly has happened to you. The inhabitants of this place are the same creatures you saw Alejandro consorting with, immense corrugated cones of clammy flesh with 4 thick limbs extending from the top. They are horrifying to look upon, but they do not harm you as you expected they might. Your first few days are spent restrained and questioned by the creatures, several of which are somehow able to communicate in English. Others reproduce your language using an odd futuristic machine played like a musical instrument. You are reminded strangely of the jazz piano of the Nightingale. It is only then that you realise your body has been altered. You have no hands or fingers to play the keys, no legs to walk upon, no lungs to scream out. You are one of them now, one of the creatures that has taken you captive, and your original body is nowhere to be seen. Despite your captivity, the creatures do not seem intent on harming you. Instead, they merely interview you, asking all manner of questions about a broad range of topics: your society, your profession, your technology, your ecosystem, your human body. Their thirst for knowledge is unyielding, unending. Their questions range from the mundane to the complex. They implore you to write copiously in your own language, taking anything you write to store away in their vast archives. You are informed that you will be able to roam the city freely if you comply. So now the investigators must choose: cooperate and tell the creatures everything you know, or refuse and resist captivity.
Yeah,
there we go.
So,
interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can. It's not kind of. I mean, it seems like a very consequential decision, but it's not massively consequential, I don't think. If you cooperate and tell them everything you know, you do intro 2, which is you'll cooperate with the creatures, hoping to earn your freedom. You are sick of captivity, and perhaps you'll be able to find a way home if you're able to roam the city at will. The creatures seem pleased that you are answering their questions, though their mannerisms are still completely alien to you. Days turn to weeks, perhaps even longer. It's difficult to tell. Finally, one of the creatures informs you that you are free to roam the halls of the cities with several restrictions. You're not allowed to do harm to your new body, for it belongs to another of their race, and you are not allowed to leave the city. Your restraints are lifted, and the creature watches with keen interest as you get used to your canonical body. And then in your campaign log you record the investigators cooperated with the Yithians, and you go to set up.
It's interesting there that they say you're not allowed to harm your new body, whereas you end up in combat during the scenario, so they're quite happy to harm your new body, and that belongs to one of their own, but you can't. Very strange.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, the other option then, if we decide to refuse and resist captivity, intro 3, these creatures abducted you and even stole you from your own body. You refuse to give your captors even a single answer. You'd spit in their faces if you could, if you knew how to spit with such body, and if you knew which one of the creatures' 4 distendable appendages was a face. Breaking free of your restraints is a hopeless endeavour, but you struggle to escape regardless. Your efforts do not go unnoticed, and one of the creatures is assigned to watch you. It seems more concerned with preventing you from harming your body than preventing you from escaping. After many days of captivity, you find a way to use this to your advantage. You struggle so hard against your restraints that they pierce into your leathery cold flesh, drawing out a bit of viscous slime blood. Your guard quickly approaches, clicking its claws together repeatedly. It undoes your restraints, and the moment it does, your claw appendages strike at what you believe to be the creature's throat. It collapses to the floor, writhing in pain. So in your campaign log, record that the investigators resisted captivity.
Yeah.
And then we
That's
move on
one
to
answer, Yithians.
Yeah. I think I just spit in what I think was your face.
Yes. So with all that, it's just the bit of a setup, and a few locations are put out, slightly different depending on whether you cooperated or resisted.
One of the key things here as well is you've got to search your decks and remove any unique item assets. They do not exist in this time period.
Yep.
And also you've got to remove Alejandro from your deck if you have him as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it wouldn't make sense for him to be jauntily following you along and helping you out when he's the one who was just behind your abduction.
Yes, exactly. So this is the big thing here, right? Is that whatever you might have been doing, like you said earlier, with your deck and whatnot, it all gets set aside, and you use one of these new investigator cards called Body of a Yithian, which is, which they're all the same, with each of your stats is at a 2. You have 7/7 instead of in terms of strength and mental strength. After you commit you have a special ability now in place of the old special ability, which is every time you commit a card to a skill test you're performing, you can double the icons on that card, limit once per test, and your Elder Sign effect is +2 draw cards. So yes, so your stats will be they're uniformly low, but you get to double pips on cards you commit to skill tests, essentially.
And that's probably the compromise from not being able to use your deck in the way you were expecting, but at least you can get a boost out of the skill icons on your cards by using that ability.
Yeah, so this is, this really does, first of all, it reduces everybody to essentially the same if you're playing multiplayer, because everybody's got the same cards, so everybody's got the same stats, same abilities, so everybody's is the same because you're a new person. But the thing is, it's going to impact people differently because you can't use any unique items. So any unique items you might have get set aside. So for example, I was looking at this, Zoe's Cross, for example, is a unique item. Silas's Net is a unique item. So people who rely on unique items to kind of power their investigators are going to probably find this more difficult than, say, others that don't. You know what I mean? So even though everybody's the same, it is kind of going to impact some more than others, depending on those things. Yeah.
And it also says each of your ally assets gains the Yithian trait. So you've still got Duke alongside you if you're playing as Ascan, but he's a little Yithian sat alongside you.
Yes, but they don't lose their abilities, right? The allies keep their abilities, is that right? Or are they all Yithians as well?
No, I think it's just us that loses our abilities, because this card has directly replaced our investigator card, hasn't it? What I really like about this, though, is if you flip it over, deck size, what it used to be when you were human. Deck building options, Yithians can't build decks. Deck building requirements do not count toward deck size. Do you remember?
Yeah, that's very good.
And there's a nice bit of flavour text there from the Shadow at Time. And then the morbid temptation to look down at myself became greater and greater, till one night I could not resist it. At first my downward glance revealed nothing whatever. A moment later I perceived that this was because my head lay at the end of a flexible neck of enormous length. Retracting this neck and gazing down very sharply, I saw the scaly, rugose, iridescent bulk of a vast cone 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide at the base. That was when I awaked half of Arkham with my screaming, as I plunged madly up from the abyss of sleep. That's a bit of flavour text then, describing the sheer size of these creatures as well. 10 feet tall, 10 feet wide at the base.
Yes.
Interesting.
And yes, and there's a lot of quotes to the Shadow Out of Time, because this directly references that particular novella by H.P. Lovecraft. So, very directly. So if you haven't read it, it's quite a good. I'm talking not to you, Kevling, but generally, if you haven't read it, generally everybody, it's quite good. I got a I have a graphic novel of it, which I find H.P. Lovecraft stuff is actually easier to digest in graphic novel form than in the original text, which can be a bit kind of overdone and overwrought at times. So, yeah, that's quite good. So the idea is that our minds have been transplanted with somebody else's mind, so we're somewhere else. A Yithian is in our bodies, around, and presumably that's what's happened to Alejandro as well, is that same thing. So yes. So here we are, we've got these bodies of Yithians. So one of the things you have to do is just deal with a whole different skill set in that way. So it's going to make for a very different kind of scenario. So yes, if you weren't expecting this, it would be a bit of a shock.
Oh yes. And then the setup is slightly different, isn't it, depending on that decision you made in the intro.
Yes.
So if we decided to cooperate with the Yithians, basically on the right of the map there were these 3 interview rooms. So we go into one of them, specifically we go into the arrival chamber.
Yep.
And then the other 2 get randomised. But if we resisted captivity, then we are placed in the restraining chamber, and the other 2 get randomised as well. And then also, I don't know why they've separated these out to do them differently, but then there's also the same check again, whether you cooperated. If you cooperated, you get a Yithian observer unengaged in the lead investigator's location, and we all gain a clue. But if we resisted captivity, then the Yithian observer is just placed in the victory display instead.
Yeah.
So he'll be the guy we just whacked in that intro text.
Yep.
So I guess has he got victory points?
I'm assuming he does, wouldn't he?
Look now. And he does have 1 victory point.
Oh, well, there you go. So, So I mean, whether you resist or not, you get a small benefit that's slightly different, but it feels hugely consequential before you know. It's like, wow, we're going to resist or not, but, it doesn't make that much difference, really.
Yes. I guess if you resist, you get a victory point, which obviously is going to help you in future scenarios as long as you survive to them. If you don't and you comply, then you get a clue which helps you in this scenario itself. So they both have a benefit. It's just whether it's immediate or long term, I guess.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly. So, okay, so that's basically set up. There's a couple of locations out. There's the 3 interview rooms, and then there's a couple of halls that are out at the beginning. But all the other locations are not known to you at the start, so it's a sort of classic wandering around trying to work out what you're supposed to be doing at the beginning. And I think that's sort of reflected in the act, where Act 1A just says exploring Nicotis, I guess you say, silent P, sort of in that sort of Egyptian kind of way. Getting out of this strange city might be harder than you thought. Its halls are endless and filled with all manner of complex futuristic machinery. Each copy of Yithian Observer gains aloof, and you just need 2 clues per investigator. So a fairly short first act, which is sort of just getting you going, really, before you really know what you're supposed to be doing. Like, it's not really telling you. You just sort of wander. It's that kind of, you're wandering around trying to work out what to do.
Yes. And then at the same time, your Agenda 1A, City of the Great Race. Somehow you have awoken in a futuristic city inhabited by odd alien creatures beyond your imagining. You must explore this strange place if you are to find a way out, but your new body is difficult to get used to. Investigators cannot put item assets into play, including item weaknesses. So again, depending on how you built your deck, you might be quite limited as to what you can actually do as part of in this early stage of the game.
Yes, exactly. Particularly if you've got an item-heavy kind of play.
But the implication there is, it says your body is difficult to get used to, so that suggests that you might get used to it later, which we'll come on to.
Yeah. How do you interpret the picture on that agenda? Is that your body somewhere else you've lost.
Yeah, I guess it must be.
Yeah. You sort of lost your mind, kind of thing. Yeah. That kind of thing. It's yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's paired with the one on the act. So one of them is you in your world, and you're occupied by the Yithian, and the one on the right is the Yithian occupied by you.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So then, yes, at the beginning you don't know. Now there's 5 doom to get through that. So the likelihood is you're gonna probably flip the act deck first, particularly if you're starting with a clue or 2.
Yeah.
That's probably the more likely thing. So it's just a case of sort of wandering around the first few areas that are made available to you in the game.
Yeah. So shall we look at those 3 arrival interviews?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Because that's what we'll probably be doing at this stage, is doing what we can in those interview rooms before we explore further. Do you want to take the first one?
Sure. Shall I do the arrival chamber one?
Yeah, that's the one where we complied, wasn't it? Where
correct. That's right.
The question.
Exactly. Now, on their hidden side, they all have the same text. And it's again a quote from the Shadow Out of Time. Meanwhile, the displaced mind, thrown back to the displacer's age and body, would be carefully guarded. It would be kept from harming the body it occupied, and would be drained of all its knowledge by trained questioners, which is, what's been happening to us. So the interview room is a 2-shroud, no-clue location, and so the picture just basically shows some sort of a bed, really. Yeah. Looks like it anyway, or something. It's hard to know. It's got a reaction trigger. After you begin your turn in this location, if there is a Yithian enemy in this location, draw a card. And so if you've got the Yithian aloof, you would be able to draw a card as well as get a clue. So there's another benefit there. And again, it's got another quote from the Shadow Out of Time. There were colossal round windows and high arched doors, and pedestals or tables such as each as tall as the height of an ordinary room. There we go. That's the interview. That's the arrival chamber. Okay.
So then I'll take the restraining chamber, which is the other starting location if you have resisted our captors. Again, all 3 of these have got the same hidden side, as you said. So the revealed side, it's 4 shroud and 1 clue per location. And as an action, you can parley, which is test, my brain's gone dead, the book symbol, intellect of 4, or fight of 4, to interrogate the captive mind restrained here. If you succeed, remember that you interviewed a subject. If you fail, take 2 horror. And it's a victory 1 location. So again, that's without knowing at this stage, that is one of the objectives of this scenario. We have a certain number of tasks to do to escape, and that is going to be one of them.
Yes. And then the final of the interview rooms is called the Ichor-filled chamber. It's a 1 shroud, 1 clue per investigator location, so easy to get clues from. Forced, after you enter this location, test 3 willpower. Take a horror for each point you fail by. So a bit of a graveyard from Midnight Mass type effect. And it says, an unidentified ooze covers the large table near the center of the chamber. The remains of a failed experiment or something far worse. Okay. So that's the 3 interview rooms.
And then I guess there'll be one of the halls will be connecting those 3 interview rooms, won't they? So I'm assuming it's the eastern one. Trying to remember the compass in my head.
Yeah. There's 3 halls, aren't there?
Yes.
There's a eastern, northern, and western corridor.
Yeah. And all 3 of those interview rooms are connected to the eastern one. And that is 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Actually, let's do the hidden side first. So, halls of Nakotas, eastern corridors. It's ancient and Nakotas traitorred. At this point, it appeared the desert sands lay directly upon a floor of some titan structure of Earth's youth. how preserved through eons of geologic convulsion I could not then and cannot now even attempt to guess. So that's the suggestion there, that this is this has been here since time immemorial, almost. Yes, the early days of the planet, probably.
Yeah, so this is like back in time, well, way before, humans were around.
Definitely.
Things, yep.
Yeah. And so, so as I said, 3 shroud, 1 clue, just 1 clue, not 1 clue per investigator.
Yes.
And as a free trigger, during your turn, choose and discard a card from your hand and move to another copy of Halls of Nikotus, limit once per turn. So we've got these 3 halls that each will lead to other locations. So it's a way of moving around the map a little quicker. You can discard a card to get free move to one of the other corridor rooms. And then a bit of flavour text there again from Shadow Out of Time. Later I had visions of sweeping through cyclopean corridors of stone and up and down gigantic inclined planes of the same monstrous masonry. I actually had to look up what cyclopean meant. Obviously you think it means cyclops, but it's also a type of masonry where things made from huge sort of limestone blocks with no mortar. Not that that looks like that in the picture, but yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose it's the idea that everything's at a much bigger scale than sort of human scale, that kind of thing. There you go. Yeah, so I guess, despite the fact that we've only got 2 intellect for the body of the Yithian, it's likely that, we'll be able to get clues fairly quickly. And get the 2 clues per investigator that are required, which means that then we'll be probably, most of the time, and you would hope so, be flipping Act 1A before you have to flip Agenda 1A. Do you mind if shall I read the...
Yeah, sure.
So Act 1B says, Finding Your Way. You explored the area near your interview chamber for some time, learning more of this city and its dwellers. It is a place of knowledge and research inhabited by beings who call themselves the great race of Yith. For the most part, the Yithians allow you to explore the city without troubling you, though some of them follow you about and observe you with keen interest. As you pass through one of the city's meandering halls, you find a panel attached to the wall. It is a technological device you cannot hope to understand. As you stand in front of it, dumbfounded, one of the observers approaches cautiously. It extends one of its claw appendages and manipulates the panel in a convoluted manner. To your surprise, the wall in front of you slides open to reveal another series of halls. The creature steps aside to let you pass. There you go. Put each set-aside location into play. So that's the Great Library, the Laboratory of the Great Race, the Yithian Orrery, the Deconstruction Room, and the Towers of Nikotus. So that's all the other locations, I think, pretty much. And then you choose one of these locations at random and put the set-aside Custodian asset into play at one of those randomly chosen locations. And note, each copy of the Yithian Observer is no longer aloof. So the aloof has now disappeared. So yes, so that puts out a whole lot of other locations for you to travel to.
Also, out of interest, I meant to mention this earlier when we first came across the term of Nikotus. When you look it up on the H.P. Lovecraft wiki, it says in the remote past, Nikotus was located in what is now known as the Great Australian Desert. So we're a little bit closer to home to you now, but in the remote past. So it's almost we're sort of transferred back in time as well as into another body, I guess.
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay, there we go. We're in the Aussie desert in the distant past. There we go. Brilliant.
Okay, shall I take the agenda 1B now then?
Yep.
So
yeah, good idea. Yep.
Yeah, so when that flips, it's called the Replicator. As you traverse these strange halls, you come across a chamber you hadn't noticed before. It is filled with trinkets and items of all kinds from various civilizations. Many of them match the descriptions you have given to the city's inhabitants, descriptions of the equipment you had on your person when you first encountered the creatures. Have they somehow replicated the objects you had with you? You take what you can, what you can find, and continue exploring. Each investigator searches the top 9 cards of his or her deck for up to 2 item assets and draws them. Shuffle each searched deck. Note, investigators are now able to put item assets into play. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck, and if the custodian is in play and not controlled by an investigator, move it to the location with the most clues on it. So we're starting to get used to our bodies. We can use items, and we actually are able to recover some of our own items. I quite like that idea that they've been interviewing you, although if you've been resisting captivity and not answering the questions, you've not told them anything, so they haven't been able to replicate anything, but we'll set that to one side.
Yes.
But yeah, I quite like the idea that they've been manufacturing or replicating the things you have been talking about. And so actually, I told them about my butterfly swords or whatever it was. Here they are. I found they made me a copy.
Yes.
Yeah, quite nice, right?
Exactly. Yes. And this custodian is traded a curious Yithian, so they are they're not an enemy as such, they're an ally, so they're not an enemy at all, and you can take control of them. So it says there's a reaction trigger when the investigator phase begins. If you control the custodian, each investigator at its location draws a card. So that's nice. And there's a action here. If the custodian is not controlled by a player, parley test 3 book to converse with the library custodian. If you succeed, something about its mannerism seems familiar to you. So that implies that this is somebody we know because it's familiar to us. Hint, hint, place one of your clues on it. Then if there are 1 per investigator clues on it, take control of the custodian, so it becomes an ally, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting.
Curious and curious. All will be revealed.
All will be revealed, indeed.
Or
so
implied.
I think now that they're out of the way, we've got kind of more of a clear idea about what to do and also what we're up against as well, don't we, Kevling?
We do, yes.
In terms of what, yes.
Yeah, so we've not done either of the 2 new acts or agendas yet, have we? So no. Yeah, I'll let you pick that up then. Sorry.
Shall I pick up the act here and do that? So the Act 2A then says restricted access. You have to find a way back home. Surely if the Yithians can bring you to this place, there must be a way to return. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to get yourself back home. And objective, if 3 of the following are true, you must advance, and they are: an investigator found the process, an investigator dissected an organ, an investigator interviewed a subject, an investigator realized what year it is, an investigator activated the device, an investigator controls the custodian. So if you've got 3 of those, so it's a little bit like the unspeakable oath, where remember you're setting fire to things and causing fights and all kinds of things. So it's a similar idea. You've got to do 3 of these, and if you do that, then you must advance. So now you know what you've got to do. You've got to find these things. You may have already done one of them, as you said, which was the interviewed subject. You may have already done that, but you've got to do 3 of them, and you can't advance until you've done 3 of them.
I like the way as well, particularly when you're coming into this for the first time, all of those objectives are all vague enough to you have absolutely got no idea where to go or what to do. But I also like the idea that it is almost like an open world. Like you go out and do the things that you think you are most suited to do, and you're able to achieve. Which I think when we played it, we ended up in a position where there was one of those that was going to be incredibly difficult due to the way enemies had spawned. So in the end, we decided we're not going to touch that one. Let's go over and concentrate on the others.
Do something else.
So I quite like that flexibility. You're not forced to do everything.
No.
But obviously there will be a consequence if you don't do a certain number of these things.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. It's great. The flexibility is great. And I had the same issue with Unspeakable Oath. The only slight downside is that it doesn't scale to the number of investigators. So obviously, if there's 4 people, it's much easier to get done than if it's just you're playing this true solo. That's the only thing.
Definitely, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and then so we're looking at the agenda. The second agenda is called Lost Memories. Little by little, the memories of your former life are starting to fade. The most recent events are the first to disappear, but soon you begin to lose your grip on your human identity. Each investigator's maximum hand size is reduced by 2.
Yes.
So I quite like that as a way of your hand size and your deck sort of collectively represent your identity, doesn't it? You don't necessarily have all of these people tagging along alongside you. It's almost like you are inspired by them or whatever. There's different ways you can interpret how the deck works in this game, isn't there? But the idea there, your hand size is reduced. You're slowly starting to forget what makes you you, so you have fewer tools at your disposal.
Yep. Yes, and particularly with the way the body of the Ythian works, which is committing cards gives you extra boost your skill. It actually losing that actually does have a direct impact. So there's a nice synergy there with those. So yeah,
definitely.
So I guess we'll have a look at these other locations, shall we, and see and find out where we've got to go and what we've got to do. But shall I read one of these out? The Great Library or Great Library.
Yeah, sure.
Which is looks huge, and again, it's got a quote from Shadow Out of Time. In its vast libraries were volumes of texts and pictures holding the whole of Earth's annals, histories and descriptions of every species that had ever been or that ever would be, with full records of their arts, their achievements, their languages, and their psychologies. So one of the things Lovecraft is getting at here is because the Ythians can sort of swap minds with other people, they're not restricted to the past and the present only, but they can also gather information about the future because they're sort of inhabiting the minds of people in the future as well. So, yeah. And on the other side, it's a 2-shroud, 4 clues, just 4 clues, not per investigator. And this is traded Ancient Narcotis. You can take an action to spend 1 per investigator clues, test 3 intellect to decipher the information you found. If you succeed, remember that you have found the process. So that's one of them. That's using intellect. Enforced at the end of the round, if there are fewer than 4 clues on the Great Library, add clues to the Great Library until there are 4 clues on it. So it's constantly gaining more clues, that particular location.
And that's quite a nice fit narratively as well, isn't it? You're in this vast resource of all the information they've ever gathered over the entire history of time, and so you're never going to run out of things to find out.
No, exactly. It's very nice.
Yeah. And then the other location that's connected to that western corridor is Towers of Narcotis. So again, on its hidden side, in certain places I beheld enormous dark cylindrical towers which climbed far above any of the other structures. Again, that's from the Shadow Out of Time. And when it's revealed, it's 2 shroud, 2 clues per investigator, and as an action you can discard any number of cards from your hand, shuffle your discard pile into your deck, and draw cards equal to 1 more than the number of cards you discarded, limit once per turn. So that's quite powerful, really, isn't it? Because there's not many ways of recycling your discard deck without taking horror.
Yeah. So
that's quite useful.
Yeah.
And it's a two victory 2 location as well. So and it's only 2 shrouds, so that's quite a good location if you want to farm a bit of XP as well.
Yep.
Oh no, we've got a little bit more flavour text on the bottom there, sorry. The great sandy desert beyond is no escape for you. If you leave, you will never repossess your body. So I guess that's a little subtle hint there that we are to stay within this little map we've got, where there is no escape. The only way out is to perform these tasks.
Exactly. And then we have the laboratory of the Great Race, which is another key location, sort of a, where other locations hinge off this one. And the flavor text here is, I had learned all things that were ever known or ever would be known on the earth, though the power of its keener minds to project themselves into the past and future, even though gulfs of millions of years, and study the law of every age. So this is a 2-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location. Action: if there are no clues on laboratory of the Great Race, test 3 agility to manipulate the controls on the technological device nearby. If you succeed, remember that you activated the device. If you fail, place 1 clue on the laboratory of the Great Race from the token pool. So, yeah, it's, you're trying to manipulate the device, and if you fail, it's sort of got a setback. Yeah. Things like that. So that's,
and I guess it's fitting that agility is the test you're doing there, because you're trying to manipulate these new limbs that you're not familiar with as well. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it all fits quite nicely.
Very nice. It's nice when there's a sort of a connection between the location and what you have to do there. It's great.
Definitely. So from that laboratory of the Great Race, that then links off into 2 separate rooms, doesn't it? So I'll take the first of those, the deconstruction room. They were only partly material, as we understand matter, and their type of consciousness and media of perception differed wholly from those of terrestrial organisms. Another quote from Shadow Out of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a 3-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location. I'm not quite sure what the artwork is there. It's sort of little pink tentacle type creatures or bits of creatures, or leftovers of creatures. Well, I suppose it's called the deconstruction room, isn't it? It's what's left after something has been deconstructed. Nice. So as an action here, you can test fight of 4 to attempt to retrieve a valuable organ from one of the alien cadavers. This test gets +1 difficulty for each clue on the deconstruction room. If you succeed, remember that you dissected an organ. So obviously, if this is a 4-player game, you're going in here with an 8 test, aren't you? An 8 fight test. So I guess you've got to get the clues down to make the test more manageable. And I suppose that replicates the horror of having to fish through all of these body parts to try and find something, this specific organ that you want to dissect. It's a bit grim, that one.
And then the final location, I think it is the final one, isn't it, is the Yithian Orrery. I don't know what one of those is.
Word. It's like a planetarium type, sort of a model of the planets in a solar system sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Where they sort of rotate round each other.
Yeah. I seem to talk in some odd language of claw clickings with exiled intellects from every corner of the solar system. There was a mind from the planet we know as Venus, which would live incalculable epochs to come, and one from the outer moon of Jupiter 6 million years in the past. So, yeah, there's really epic scope here. So this is a 4-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location. There's a double action. If there are no clues on the Yithian Orrery, remember that you realize what year it is. And while you're at the Yithian Orrery, increase your maximum hand size by 2, which we found very handy for later.
Definitely. I was going to say, that's another victory point location, as was the deconstruction room, which I think I forgot to mention at the time.
Yeah. Just back to your point about kind of remembering and forgetting yourself, it's almost like when you see the Earth and all the solar system and you remember what year it is, somehow your sense of self comes back.
Yeah. And then with that quote as well on the back that you're speaking to people, to intelligences from the distant future and the far past, and somehow that might help you realise where you are in the stream of time and realise what year it is.
Yeah, exactly right.
But are you remembering what year it is now, or are you remembering what year it is where you are? I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. So, as we saw with the act, you've got to find 3 of those, right?
Yes.
And as soon as you've got 3 of them, you flip it. Shall I read the back here? The process. You believe you have discovered the process used by the Yithians to transport you here, but the truth is hard to accept. Your body was never brought to this place. Your mind has been transferred into your body, into the body of one of these creatures. Somewhere in another place, in another time, one of these reviled creatures dwells in your body. So you've done a swapsy. That's probably better than your actual body being, physically here as well. It's probably good that your body's where it's supposed to be. Maybe, I don't know. But it's done a swapsy. So that's the kind of the thing, the spoiler if you haven't read Shadow Ab Time, but that's the whole sort of thing there. You no longer have to perform any of the following tasks. However, the more that you have performed, by the time the scenario ends, the easier the transition to your human body will be, and the less likely the process will fail or backfire. Be careful in bold. Place this act in the victory display with this side face up as a reminder.
Yeah, if that's not a warning, I don't know what is. Be careful in bold as if it's an action.
Exactly. So it's basically saying do as many of these things as you can before time runs out.
Do you want to take the new act as well? Because then that will give us our time scale, I suppose, or our time, or how we can end, how we make a decision on when to end this.
Yeah. So Act 3A says repossession. You have gathered the knowledge necessary to repossess your body, but before you can initiate the process, you must expand your mind. Each Yithian observer gains hunter, so they're now after us. They're sort of onto us that we're doing something. Spend a clue, draw 2 cards instead of 1. If your hand exceeds your maximum hand size, draw an additional card. So basically, it's about drawing as many cards as you can. Yes. That's why the orrery is a nice place, because you can maximize your hand size there. Objective: if each surviving investigator has 10 or more cards in his or her hand, immediately advance, in brackets, beware, remember to complete as many tasks listed in Act 2B as you can. So that's the job to do now. Yes.
So I shall now follow the agenda progressing. So while we're busy trying to achieve as many of these as we can, it's possible that another 7 rounds will have passed. I think actually we were able to we did 5 out of the 6, didn't we, before Agenda 2 advanced, if I remember right. So I think we did quite well, especially for us, given how we usually play.
Yes. Yeah, we got through them reasonably fast.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many locations, and also those central ones, you can discard a card to sort of get a free move as well. So you can get around fairly quickly. Yeah.
So, Agenda 2B, Final Recollection. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck. If the custodian is in play and not controlled by an investigator, move it to the location with the most clues on it. Check your supplies. If an investigator has a pendant, that investigator reads the following. As you spend more and more time in the alien city, your memories of the past continue to fade. Then a spark of hope returns to you, and you recall an object you once carried with you, one that brought you comfort when times were tough. You sift through the objects the Yithians replicated from your descriptions, and there you find it, a pendant on a silver chain. As you hold it, your real identity comes flooding back. Each investigator with a pendant draws 2 cards. For the remainder of the scenario, each investigator with a pendant ignores any effect that would reduce his or her maximum hand size. Wow. So that, once you know about that, that is a must-have. Because if you're ignoring the hand size reduction, your hand size is maximum hand size is already 8.
Yes.
And we only need 2 extra ones to be able to finish the scenario.
Exactly. You just need a clue and you've got your 10, right?
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember now. I think I made a note of what the description of that pendant was. Oh, it's in the... there was something curious about the way they worded it. It was pendant. It cost you 1 supply point to bring it along. Useless. But fond memories bring comfort to travellers far from home. So a nice little bit of foreshadowing in the description there. I really like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Particularly the first time you read it, you play this, you think, what's the point in taking that?
Yeah.
But, it can make the world of difference to this particular scenario, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yes.
So if we progress then on to the final agenda, Agenda 3A, Humanity Fading. How long has it been? Days? Weeks? Years? Each investigator's maximum hand size is reduced by 4. So you're now down to a 4 hand size.
Yeah.
So that means to get up to 10, you've got to take all 3 of your actions to get 2 cards at a time, was it?
Yeah.
So if your hand size is 4, you take 1 action to draw 2 to get it to 6.
And you get an extra 1 because you're exceeding your maximum hand size. So you go to 7.
Would you get an extra 1 at that point because you weren't exceeding your maximum hand size when you took the action? Maybe that's a timing question.
Oh, okay. Right.
Maybe it's only the second draw you get the max.
Okay.
Anyway, but yes, you're going to take 2 or 3 actions to try to actually...
Yes.
Because then at the end of the round, if you've not made it, you go back down to 4 again.
Exactly.
That's why the pendant becomes essential, especially if the agenda progresses to this stage.
Yes, exactly. So I think what we did was get ourselves into the orrery.
Yes.
And then sort of do it from there.
Yeah, I think we gave up on one of the ones over on the western side, didn't we? I think it was the library where I think I can't remember which card it was. Was it one of the scholar? Not the scholar. There was a particularly nasty guy, wasn't there, who spawned over there?
Yeah, I think
Keeper of the Great
the
Library. That was him. Yes, 343. Because as soon as you found the process, he would lose aloof and gain hunter. So, and he was in the location where you would find the process. So he was just going to get us as soon as we did that. So let's leave that, and we'll go and concentrate.
Who needs to know the process? Yeah, exactly. So, so probably most of the time you've got, once you know what to do, you want to be getting 5 of the 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you can do 6, but at least 5 of the 6, but you definitely don't want the agenda to run out under any circumstances. No, sorry.
But given the first time you play this, it probably will. Shall I take that then as the next thing to read?
Yeah. Yes.
So, Agenda 3B, Alien Existence. You forget all that you once were. Your name and your humanity are lost. However, the lost city of Nakotas calls to you. Its peaceful halls a treasure trove of knowledge more vast than anything your mind could have comprehended before your arrival here. Your purpose lost in the haze, you live out your days with the great race of Yith until one day... ... Each surviving investigator is defeated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Until one day... What?
Do you want to read the defeat text?
So if no resolution was reached, each investigator was defeated. Alejandro, what are you? You suddenly cry out. A nurse stands over you, peering into your eyes with a small light. You push the nurse away and rise to your feet, suddenly puzzled and disoriented. Despite the nurse's protest, you wobble feebly out of the room. You're in a hospital, its white halls smelling faintly of disinfectant and other chemicals. Just moments prior, hadn't you been exploring some kind of underground cavern? You cannot recall. Excuse me, come back. You must rest, the nurse calls out to you, gripping your forearm and pulling you back to your cot. She examines you closely while you recover from the shock of being transported so far in a short time. Who is Alejandro? She asks, and you struggle to recall. The name doesn't ring a bell. You ask the nurse how you came to be here, wondering why she isn't surprised at your sudden appearance. Why, you admitted yourself to St. Mary's just last night. Do you not remember? You have no memory of this, and you are starting to grow concerned. You're acting a little strangely, if I may be so bold, and you spoke in a strange fashion, almost as if English weren't your first language. But now I see you probably just drank a little bit too much. She notices your questioning expression and smiles. Don't worry, we get that kind of thing quite often these days, now that all the bars and pubs are on the up and up again. You examine your face in the mirror. You are tired and older than you remember. Something important lies on the very edge of your memory, fuzzy and blurred. It takes about a minute before the significance of the nurse's last statement catches up to you. Turning back towards the nurse, you ask what year it is, terrified of the answer. Why, 1934, of course. My, you must have had a heck of a night, she chuckles. In your campaign log, record that the investigators had their memories expunged. Each investigator is driven insane, and the investigators lose the campaign.
Whew, harsh.
Yes.
Harsh.
So I'm guessing that's what the until one day, ... I guess what has happened is the Yithian controlling your body has decided, right, I'm going home now. And he goes, but what I'll do, I'll put you in a safe place, I'll put you in a hospital, and then I'll go, and then you can come back. And so that's, I love that. Brilliant. It's obviously that's awful, first time you experience it, but let's just say it could be worse.
Yeah. Yes. That's pretty harsh, isn't it? Getting defeated. So, it's all, and lose the campaign, which means the campaign's over, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's
done
it.
And dusted.
No swapping out for another investigator.
No.
That's the end.
Yeah.
And it's with still 2 scenarios to go as well.
Yeah.
Ouch.
So if even one person this happens to, the campaign is lost. Is that right, or is it only?
No. It says if each investigator was defeated. So if we've all.
Oh, I see.
But then again, it would be if the agenda advanced. It does say each surviving investigator is defeated.
Yeah. Right.
So So if time runs out, we find ourselves a decade later or whenever it was in an insane asylum or a hospital or whatever. Yeah. It's a hospital, isn't it? Sorry, St. Mary's.
Literally a forgotten age has passed. You've forgotten it all. So, yes. So that's pretty harsh. A bit like the Unspeakable Oath. That also was a sort of a campaign ender because you ended up in the asylum permanently. So, pretty harsh in that way. So, if you don't go down that path, so you manage in some way to get some of these done, and you get your 10 cards, then you go to Back to the Future. The machine whirs with intense vibration. It has taken many hours to construct, and you have had to build it in secret, using the knowledge you have gathered from the various areas within the city. It is a strange device of rods, wheels, and glass about the size of a small filing cabinet. A circular mirror in the center sends your alien reflection staring back at you. You activate the device and feel a tugging in your psyche, stretching your consciousness across the ether of space and time. The memories come flooding back. There we go. Yay! Now, it's still not that straightforward, though, even though your memories have come flooding back, because it kind of depends, doesn't it, Kevling?
Yeah, resolution 1 often is the good resolution, but this is the only resolution, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So it says, if you awaken on the cold stone surface of the cavern floor, your mind dizzy from its journey through time and space. So then you check the number of tasks you completed. If all 6 tasks were completed, then record that the process was perfected, and each investigator earns 4 bonus experience as he or she gains insights into the secrets of the Earth. If 5 tasks were completed, then record that the process was successful. Each investigator earns 2 bonus points, and he or she gains insights into the secrets of the Earth. If 4 tasks were completed, the process backfired. Apparently, each investigator, you get 1 bonus experience and gain insights. If 3 tasks were completed, which they have to, because otherwise you wouldn't have.
You've literally not been able to do anything more than the bare minimum.
Exactly. The process backfired spectacularly.
It can't be that bad, can it? Why say it like that?
Yeah. And you don't get any additional bonus. So, yes. Yes.
So then we move on to an interlude, don't we?
Yes, that's right.
And we face the
a few of
consequences of how well we did.
Mm-hmm.
So, Interlude 4, those held captive, in order, reach each of the following. So check the campaign log. If the process backfired, each investigator reveals a random chaos token from the chaos bag. Consult the list below to see what side effects result from your mishap. If the process backfired spectacularly, each investigator reveals 2 random chaos tokens instead of 1, choosing the token that is lower on this list to resolve and ignoring the other. So just to remind us, so that's if we only did 3 or 4 tasks. If we did 3 tasks, we reveal 2 chaos tokens. If we did 4 tasks, we reveal 1.
Mm-hmm.
So if you reveal the Elder Sign or +1, you suffer no ill effects. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that's what, probably only 2 tokens in the entire chaos bag.
That's right.
So you know it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Each investigator who reveals a skull token or any number other than +1 gains the out-of-body experience weakness and must add that to his or her deck. So that weakness is shuffle each card from your hand into your deck and draw an equal number of cards. Shuffle out-of-body experience into your deck. So it's basically just recycling your deck, isn't it? Recycling your hand. So whatever you were about to do, you're not going to be able to do it because you've now got to swap all your cards out. Yeah. So that is probably not the worst treachery, but it's probably just annoying more than anything else.
Annoying.
Weakness, sorry, not treachery. Yeah.
Exactly.
But then now we're on to the bad part. Each investigator who reveals a cultist, tablet, elder thing, or auto-fail token must use the body of a Yithian investigator card as his or her investigator card for the remainder of the campaign. He or she also gains the out-of-body experience weakness and must add it to his or her deck.
Oh,
that
boy.
Is savage, isn't it? Oh. You are now a Yithian for the remainder of the campaign. And nobody says anything. Nobody points it out. Why? How come you're a 10-foot tall cylindrical cone of flesh with tentacles instead of a face? No. But now that is, that is vicious.
Yeah, that's rough.
And I think that outcome is probably one of the reasons why people don't like this scenario, because it can absolutely destroy the rest of your campaign.
Exactly, particularly when it's getting to the pointy end, right? And things are getting really rough. So, yeah. Yes.
Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so the next one is check the chaos bag and the campaign log. If all of the following are true, the lead investigator reads a mind recovered. If any of the following are not true, then you read forever lost instead. Now, for a mind recovered, there have to be 2 or more tablet tokens in the chaos bag. I don't remember why you would have tablets in there. I
think they are the ones when you side with Alejandro,
Yeah. Investigators rescued Alejandro, and the custodian was under an investigator's control when the previous chapter ended. So this is all sort of pro-Alejandro. A mind recovered, you turn your attention to your surroundings. Though the creatures that ambushed you are nowhere to be found, Alejandro lies on the ground nearby, stirring into consciousness. To your surprise, he appears just as confused as you are. At first, it seems as though he recalls nothing of the previous expedition or the Etzli relic, but then his eyes suddenly spark with recognition. He grips your shoulder tightly and gazes at you as though for the first time in years. I do remember! We shared one mind for some time, the creature and I. It wished to find the Etzli relic, though for what purpose I do not know. He slumps backward against the stone wall, recovering from the sudden influx of memories. You believed me at every turn, even when the creature had control. You saved me from that abysmal place and brought me back to humanity. For this I cannot begin to repay you. He shakes your hand vigorously, filled with a sudden intense resolve. We will write all of this, you and I. Then we will tell the world what we have seen. In your campaign log, record that Alejandro remembers everything. Add a tablet token to the chaos bag for the remainder of the campaign. So Alejandro was under the same spell. He wasn't really Alejandro. He was a Yithian in disguise. So now we know.
And that suggests that that's who the custodian was, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because there was something familiar about him.
Yes.
Although I'm not quite sure why something would be familiar about him, because the only Alejandro we know was being controlled by the Yithian.
So yes, that's right.
But never mind.
Maybe he had a pith helmet on or something, Yeah.
So no, that's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. The person we've been in this instance, the person we've been supporting through the campaign turned out to have been an alien the whole time. Now he's back.
He's back. He's back. And I'll just finish this section off. So the forever lost version, which is if you haven't sided with Alejandro, and a lot of the time you're not. It's kind of, you have to really kind of work at it, I think, to side with Alejandro.
It feels like the natural choice is always to side with Ichtaco, isn't it?
It is. It is, exactly. You turn your attention to your surroundings. Both Alejandro and the creatures that ambushed you are nowhere to be found. You wonder how long Alejandro was in league with them and why. Perhaps you will never know. However, you suspect that is not the last you will see of him. In your campaign log, record that Alejandro is set against you. If Alejandro Vela is part of an investigator's deck, remove him from that investigator's deck for the remainder of the campaign. So there you go.
Okay, then the next one is the narrow steps on the other side of the stone doorway seem almost endless. Though a dim red glow emanates from deeper within the cavern, no matter how many steps you traverse, the glow does not brighten. It almost seems to grow more distant with each step, mocking your tenacity. After a short while you come to a small ledge, where a stone gate bars your passage deeper into the cavern. The gate bears a familiar carved pattern, faded from age and disrepair, and seeping with an oddly discoloured purulence. Check your supplies. If any investigator has chalk, he or she reads "the way is open", otherwise the lead investigator reads "the way is shut". So the way is open, the situation sparks your memory, and you consult the expedition journal. The pattern is similar to one found in the Etsley ruins. Using your chalk and the drawings in your journal as a reference, you restore the glyph in its entirety, and the grooves glow brightly once more. The stone gate lifts on its own, and you are able to continue onward. You suffer no ill effects. Whereas if the way is shut, you are unsure how to proceed. After debating the merits of each of your options, you decide that brute force may be the only solution. It takes all of your strength to lift the stone, and you open the way forward for each of you one at a time. It is no simple task, and your body aches tremendously from the effort. When drawing opening hands during the next scenario, investigators cannot take a mulligan. So it's quite a nice sort of interpretation of being exhausted, I suppose. You're not able to prepare yourself properly in the next scenario. You just take what you're given.
Yep. And then you've got to check your supplies. Investigators as a group must cross off one provision per investigator for their supplies. For each provisions they cannot cross off, choose an investigator to read low on rations. So if you're low on rations, hours later you're almost too weary to go on. Every inch of your body aches with intense pain. There is nothing in this desolate cavern to eat but the occasional wild mushroom. And although temptation gnaws at your inside, you cannot tell which are toxic and which are healthy. You begin the next chapter with 3 fewer resources.
And then you check your supplies again. Each investigator with medicine may cross it off his or her supplies to choose and remove a poisoned weakness from any investigator's deck. Each investigator who still has a poisoned weakness reads "the poison spreads", which says the poison has spread to nearly every part of your body. Your skin pales and you are covered in cold, feverish sweat. Simply rising to your feet requires a tremendous effort, and you get no rest at night despite your exhaustion. It won't be long now before the poison claims your life. You suffer 1 physical trauma.
Boy. Yes, we're definitely back in the forgotten age, aren't we? And then the next bit says, after descending hundreds and hundreds of steps, you decide to stop and rest, though your watch tells you that night has fallen. The lack of natural sky is starting to affect your internal clock. With no flat ledge in sight, each member of the party claims one of the many narrow steps to sleep on. Check your supplies. Each investigator with a blanket reads restful sleep, and the rest read tossing and turning. So restful sleep is that Though you long for a proper bed, at least your blanket protects you from the frigid chill that permeates the cabin. When morning arrives, your body longs for more sleep, but you must press onward and reach the nexus as fast as you can. You suffer no ill effects, and tossing and turning, sleep does not come easily for you. Barely any layers protect you from the bitter cold of the underground cabin, and you lie shivering for hours before exhaustion finally claims you. You awaken every hour or so as the shifting of your body almost causes you to tumble off your stone perch. When morning comes, you are even more weary than you were the previous night. You suffer a physical or a mental trauma. Your choice. Oh, that's generous.
And the frustrating thing is, all of those things could be happening to you after you've just been turned into a Yithian as well. So it's a constant stream of punishment, it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Oof. Yeah. So there we go. What do you reckon, Kevling?
I mean, I've said it all along. I really like that scenario. I just love the idea of it being so different to anything that's gone before, in terms of completely changing who you're playing as and what your skills and abilities are and what you're able to do, completely mixing it up. Almost doing almost like you say, a retread of Unspeakable Oath with a bit of Midnight Mask as well. Let's see how much you can do before the time limit runs out. But the penalties can be incredibly severe.
Yes, exactly.
And what do you think? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite negative about it in the past. I don't mind it so much now. I think it's a nicely done scenario. It's full of it really is a love letter to the Shadow Out of Time. It's very rich from that perspective, and it's certainly different. Two things for me, I think. First of all, it feels more like a standalone scenario.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like a side quest, isn't it? It's off. It's set in a different time period with different people, with a different location. Yes.
Exactly. It feels like it could be shoehorned into any campaign, to be honest, in a way. It really does sit by itself. And so I don't feel like it's very integrated into the overall campaign because it feels like a standalone. And the problem is that it's incredibly punishing because particularly the first time you don't know what's going to happen, it could end up, you'll never get to the depths of Yoth. So you've worked through your blood, sweat and tears through the Forgotten Age. You get blindsided by this particular scenario that literally ends the campain. So you never get to do the depths of Yoth. I think I've only done the depths of Yoth once because I never got that far.
Yeah, it's like you say, it just doesn't scale to true solo either, does it? Because you've got one solo investigator getting 5 or 6 of those quests is near impossible, I would say. Well, at least for someone of my skill level, that's for sure. But like you say, we found it easier with there being 2 of us because we were able to split up and do different objectives at the same time.
Yes, exactly. And we knew the consequences of not getting them done as well. So it just feels I can see that someone doing it for the first time, it's very disempowering. It's like suddenly, everything's, particularly if you're playing someone with a sort of a specialized item or something like that gets all taken away from you. You're suddenly playing a different game with a kind of different investigator.
Yeah.
You don't realize the consequences of not doing things quickly, and it can be really punishing if you don't finish it particularly effectively. So, yes, I can really see that people would get a bit ragey about that.
But from a narrative point of view, I think a lot of the mechanisms work really well, and the way that they tie into the story that's being told, I think it's really superb from that angle.
absolutely. Within the scenario itself, it works really well. That's why I think it works as a great standalone scenario. How it fits into the Forgotten Age story, it feels very kind of shoehorned in a way. It doesn't fit so easily in that way. Certainly a change. It's certainly not one you forget. It's a very memorable scenario. Oh, yes. There's no question. So I feel a bit on the fence about it because, like you say, it's great within the scenario, great story. It's very memorable. It comes to life really well. It really anchored in that story, The Shadow Out of Time. But the other things about it make it really challenging. So, for me, it's kind of 50-50, I feel, about it now, I guess. Yeah. Yes. So there we go. I don't know what you listeners think, and please, let us know your thoughts about this particular scenario. It is quite polarizing in that way, so let us know at ftextpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So what are we going to be looking at next time, Kevling?
It's the Depths of Yoth, as you just referred to, that you've only ever seen once before. So we are venturing down that everlasting staircase. It almost seems like down those steps. We've fought our way through that door one way or another, and we're going to see what is down there.
Yeah, so we go from one of the more disliked scenarios to actually one of the beloved scenarios. I think Depths of Yoth is one of the scenarios that a lot of people like an awful lot. So I'm looking forward to giving it a go and seeing what it's like, because I barely remember it, to be honest, because I've only ever gotten this far once before. So I'll be really interested to see what people like so much about this one. So. Yeah. So there we go. So thanks very much for listening, and please like, comment, and subscribe, as we said. And I'm very much looking forward. Kevling and I are looking forward to going through the Depths of Yoth. Hopefully we'll survive it, and then having a chat about it. But until then, I'm CrabbyTerror8,
and I'm Kevling.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. So as usual, thank you for listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so please subscribe on your podcast service of choice. And if you have any feedback, you can email us on ftextpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @textflavor. So on behalf of Crabby Terror and myself, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.